Morning, everyone. I'm Tim Murphy, Chair of the Board of Directors, and welcome to today's virtual meeting. And virtual because of social distancing continue to be required by COVID-19. I obviously want to continue to acknowledge the land each of us is on, where we hold this virtual meeting in the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat, and many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, and acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. As we have done in our last two board meetings in April and June, this is virtual. Can I ask people just put themselves on mute if you're not? Thank you. We're live streaming on our YouTube channel, and we're going to hear deputations from citizens during this. And written deputations have been also received, which posted and have been circulated to the board members. And the live stream will be posted on our YouTube channel for those who have difficulty getting to sleep. I want to thank staff for their efforts in making this meeting possible and their continuing efforts to provide service to tenants in this challenging time. I'd like to first welcome officially Councillor Francis Nunziata to the board, appointed in June as the mayor's designate. Thank you so much for agreeing to participate. We're very much looking forward to your expertise and experience on our board. So welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. The upcoming Simcoe Day holiday weekend includes another important commemoration this year. Saturday, August 1st is Emancipation Day, celebrated in Ontario and many countries to commemorate the Abolition of Slavery Act from August 1st, 1834, which freed more than 800,000 people of African descent throughout the British Empire. The day is an important expression of identity for Black people and communities, and a time to reflect on the continuing struggles to confront anti-Black racism and the fundamental issues of equality, equity, and justice. In terms of the, I apologize, we were a little late starting the public session. We were having our session before. There's no approvals or decisions to report out of the confidential portion, although we will be, we will be discussing some important issues and looking forward to, in the public session, and looking forward to a discussion and debate on that. We're going to hear an update in part on the implementation recommended in the Reuben Tomlinson report, as well as some additional issues that have been identified at the board around trust, fairness, and transparency. And then we'll review certain the charters of two of our committees, and then dealing with tenant engagement refresh. TCHC is committed to providing a robust and effective tenant engagement process and maintaining a democratic system of active participation and involvement as mandated under the city's shareholder direction. Unfortunately, a number of factors, including COVID, have delayed the implementation of the final stage of the refresh, for which we apologize. We would have liked to have had this in place much before this, so we apologize to our tenants for our delay. But obviously the last phase involves implementation of the final steps in the tenant engagement system. Having tenant leadership in place will enable management to improve the quality of services that TCHC provides to tenants. In terms of COVID-19, it's been more than 4 months since TCHC, in step with public health and other government levels, began implementing a series of measures to prevent and limit the spread of COVID-19. During this time, management and staff have been working to deliver essential services in our buildings, to provide supports to tenants and keep business operations running. In alignment with the city's guidance and direction, we've begun to reopen some amenities and restart some programs, especially as we now move to stage 3 as modified by the city of Toronto. Still, we are taking obviously a phased approach to protect the safety of tenants and our employees. And once again, on behalf of the board, I want to thank everyone at TCHC, employees, staff, for the tremendous work you are doing in these difficult times. It's a challenging environment, and very much appreciate what you've been doing to help deliver services to our tenants. As for deputations, we have continue to have special procedures. As I said, it's we're meeting virtually, and so we will be taking deputations both in written and live form, and we'll deal with those as they come up in the agenda items on the agenda. For the board, as you know, if you wish to speak in a matter, kind of signal or use the chat function within the application. But if we somehow miss you, please feel free to jump in. Knowing all of the board members, I'm sure that won't be an issue. Voting, we will follow the City of Toronto process on this and conduct votes by a show of hands unless a roll call is required, and then we will do it that way with the corporate secretary canvassing board members individually. So with that, we can review the public consent agenda items and the agenda. So can we put those up, please? So does any I guess we probably any director want to hold any of the agenda items? Okay, can I have a?
I'll move that, Tim.
No, I want you, before you do that, I just want to do the conflict of interest check.
Okay.
Anybody have a conflict of interest there need to declare? So none being declared. Now, I'd love to have your motion, Brian.
Okay. So you have it.
A seconder?
I'll second it, Tim.
Great, thank you. All those in favor? Any nays? Abstentions? It's carried. All right. Well, I guess we go now to item 3, which is the implementation of the Rubin-Tomlinson recommendations.
And we've got a presentation in relation to that matter. Charmaine has it up for you. If you can go to the next slide, Charmaine. What we wanted to do with the presentation is provide an update on the measures that management has taken at this point in time to implement the recommendations in the Rubin-Tomlinson report that we received in October of last year. On October 10th of 2019, TCHC released the Rubin-Tomlinson summary of its review of TCHC's human resources practices. In a statement released that day, the board indicated that it endorsed the report and had directed management to take appropriate action to implement its recommendations immediately. At that time, management committed to take appropriate action to address the remaining recommendations, review our harassment program and complaints procedure in light of the recommendations, and report back to the board in Q1 of 2020. While the COVID outbreak delayed management's report to the board in relation to the matter, as all board and committee meetings were canceled as of March in accordance with City Council direction. We're now reporting back to the board as to the measures that have and continue to be taken in order to implement those recommendations. As far as context for how we've gotten to this point, December of 2017, TCHC retained Rubin-Tomlinson in order to investigate allegations related to investigation practices. Now, prior to having done so, TCHC had revised a number of its policies, including its human rights policy, which was a matter that gave the secured board approval, procedures and complaints regarding that policy, workplace violence policy, and additionally had introduced a new workplace violence program and a separate harassment program prior to its decision to retain Rubin-Tomlinson. Next slide. And again, during the period that Rubin-Tomlinson was retained to undertake that work, it undertook additional measures to amend and implement changes as described on the slide. If you go to the next slide, Charmaine. TCHC noted in the statement that it released in connection with the board's endorsement of the recommendations in the Rubin-Tomlinson report that we'd already addressed many of the concerns raised by the report by introducing workplace harassment program and a new procedure for staff complaints in 2018. all of the actions taken by TCHC in adopting these new measures were communicated to staff when they were adopted. However, TCHC's executive leadership approves its workplace policies as those policies fall within the scope of the responsibilities delegated to management to be responsible for management and leadership of community housing. And as a consequence, the measures may not receive the public attention the policies adopted at the board level receive. In reporting back on the measures taken to implement the Rubin-Tomlinson recommendations, this presentation is intended to provide some context for the manner in which those measures supplement additional actions previously taken. And again, these are the kind of measures described in the slide that outline what steps management had taken. At present, all TCHC policies that are referenced in this presentation are available to employees through its in-house intranet site. It has a complaints resolution webpage that is specific to the manner in which employees of the company can bring forward and have concerns addressed with respect to their workplace in a constructive manner. It has, for some time, also maintained a dedicated staff complaints email account that's available to staff to submit complaints to the company with respect to workplace issues. And Legal Services Division of TCHC provides ongoing support to our HR staff on the implementation of these measures. Beyond policy changes, TCHC has also addressed training needs during the period in which the investigation was being completed. TCHC's HR division initiated training for its staff on multiple dates through both specialized training and professional conferences that address the number of topics listed in the slide. Next slide, please. Since receiving the report, we've engaged external legal counsel to undertake a further review of a number of policies that were identified as impacted by the Rubin-Tomlinson recommendations in order that we might implement those recommendations. Those include the complaints resolution policy and the other policies listed on the slide before you, the human rights policy, workplace harassment program, incident injury reporting, investigation procedure, and our workplace violence policy. The amendments adopted by the executive leadership team in May of this year are reflective of the recommendation made by Rubin-Tomlinson that TCHC should amend its workplace policies to reinforce a number of principles that include the need to provide notice of allegations to respondents prior to an investigation meeting, at which they will be asked to respond to those allegations. The need for investigation and disciplinary meetings to be separate, with investigation meetings having been concluded before decisions are made with respect to discipline, the principle that persons against whom findings of misconduct are made must be advised of the allegations and provided with an opportunity to make a full answer in defense of them. Principle that investigation processes must provide for thorough and complete investigations, including interviewing all relevant witnesses and substantiating key findings of fact, and the principle that parties to an investigation must be provided with the findings or outcomes of the investigation in a timely and thorough manner. These recommendations were contained within the Rubin-Tomlinson report summary that was issued in October by TCHC, posted on its website based on the document prepared by Rubin-Tomlinson, and that continues to be accessible on the TCHC website for anyone interested in reviewing that document. Next slide, please. So since receiving go back one. Since receiving the report, TCHC is also planning on the introduction of a professional standards unit within its legal services division. This unit will be staffed with individuals who are qualified to conduct workplace investigations. It will be assigned the task of investigating allegations that TCHC employees have violated policies, workplace policies, and it will provide additional reporting to the board. TCHC will provide additional reporting to the board regarding the actions taken to implement this change and other changes, which we anticipate we will continue to move forward with and have in place by the end of 2020. I comment with respect to the identification of this change, which is yet to be introduced. We will, through this change, separate the function of providing advice to management on workplace management issues and the function of investigating complaints with respect to those workplace management issues in an attempt to further create a process that is fair and transparent to staff. And frankly, fair to the HR staff who are called upon to provide that management advice, so that they're not placed in the position of investigating complaints against those to whom they provide that advice when it comes to workplace issues. We feel that this separation of function will avoid any perceived conflicts between the two roles and functions, and will provide a professional unit that is qualified and skilled in conducting workplace investigations in a manner that meets the principles of fairness outlined by Reuben Tomlinson in its report. Subject to any questions, I would ask the board to receive the report that is item 3 on today's agenda for its information.
So I open the floor for comments, questions by the board.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to thank Mr. Miguel for this, and I'd just like to refer this to the next board meeting so we can have this conversation in a larger context, please. Thank you. It's my motion.
Mr. Chair, we're happy to continue to report back on this matter as we continue to implement these matters.
Yep. Is there a seconder for that motion?
Debbie will second it, Tim.
And sorry, but is there any, sorry, I'm not, so you don't want to discuss this report? You want to refer it to the next meeting? I'm not quite sure the intent of the motion.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chair, your head is on my button, if you know what I mean. I can't get
very odd.
It sounds terrible. I'm sorry. But I just think this is still an ongoing conversation. So I don't want to get into too much discussion or debate on this today. I think that it's great to have this, and we should refer this to whatever meeting we'll be further discussing any issues around Reuben Tomlinson. It's pretty simple. Thank you.
So discussion.
On that motion?
No discussion. Is there?
I guess I just wanted to thank Dara for the timeline and the information, and if you could, I'm sure that'll be up on the website. So, because that I think is quite helpful for me to see the timeline and all the various actions taking place. So it certainly will inform our further discussion. Thank you.
I support that as well. I wonder when we are talking at the next board meeting, or if we could have some more information about the professional standards piece of that you referenced, Dara. I'm specifically wondering if there's going to be actually a focus also on equity, diversion, equity in the role of professional standards.
Dara?
Thank you. I will certainly bring that information back. I will bring that information back. I have a motion for the board to consider that I'll put up. I don't want to cut off debate or discussion about this, but I want to make sure that we've got the language right.
In the interim, while he's doing that, any other?
Sorry, that's not my motion. Receive it and refer it to the next board. Receive for information, but keep it alive.
Yes.
I wouldn't say that's correctly. In
So
fact,
let Dara, let Dara work on the wording. I think he
Yeah,
understands
thank
to
you,
receive
Ken.
and refer. Any other comments from the board? And Dara, so I understand the professional standards unit is reporting to you, correct? As general
correct.
counsel? Right.
Yes.
Yeah, and it wasn't so clear. It was equity, diversity, and inclusion that I was interested in knowing whether that was going to be included in that role. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Linda.
Sorry, Counselor, does that more accurately reflect what you?
Yes, thank you. Yes, very good. Thank you so much.
So I think that was moved by Paula, seconded by Debbie. All those in favor? Put up your hands.
My hand's up.
I see Councillor Bailao, Ms. Imrie, Ms. Coombe, Ms. Smith, Ms. Douglas, Councillor Nunziata, Ms. Campbell, Ms. McCrae. Councillor Fletcher, is your camera on? Can I ask you? And
It
Jackson?
goes on and off. I believe I'm trying to send it to
There
you.
she is. I see you now.
I see you now. Thank you, Councillor.
Did we miss anybody? Any nays? Okay, the motion carries. I think it's worth in the context, though, providing a little further context from the board's perspective that, these are policy recommendations that came out of Reuben Tomlinson. I mean, they also talked about issues of building trust, fairness and transparency as important principles, as I mentioned. And I think those are issues which the board is engaged in to make sure we can build that. And frankly, I think that's an ongoing obligation of the board and obviously its senior management to build an organization of trust and fairness and transparency. And we're much engaged with that and continue to be engaged with that. And I think the notion, if I can, of having this issue come back to the board is in part to make sure that we're taking the steps we need to build that organization. I didn't want people watching to feel like we've just shuffled this off, but that we are.
Exactly. No, that's exactly it, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate it. Especially, yes, thank you. I don't want to go into it.
Because obviously we want to make sure we have that kind of organization, and I think it's worthwhile for people to understand that the board is actively engaged in that and is engaging with management and believes that that's frankly crucial to the long-term success of the organization, is building that culture. Obviously, the policy changes are an important component of it, but are not the only component of it, that it involves how people behave and act and the kinds of lessons right from that the line is always the tone set at the top and we as the board at the top. And so we want to make sure those principles of trust, fairness, and transparency are reflected throughout the organization as it builds, a culture where people feel, at home and supported and are able to provide the services to our tenants, including as identified by Ms. Jackson, equity, diversity, and inclusion as important principles.
Thanks for that.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Item 4.
Ms. Jackson for that, because we'll include that more discussion once we get that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So item 4 is a request that the board approve certain amendments to the charter for the Building Investment Finance and Audit Committee and the Procurement Awards Committee. These amended charters are part of a review that was initiated in January of this year at the Governance, Communications, and Human Resources Committee as part of a regular periodic review of all board and committee charters. At that time, on January 28th, TCHRC approved the changes that are before the board today and recommended that the board approve them subject to the subsequent approval of the charter amendments by both the Bifac and the PAC itself. On March 12th, 2020, the PAC approved the proposed amendments to its charter, and on June 17th of this year, the Bifac approved the proposed amendment to both the PAC and Bifac charter. The Bifac charter amendment is a technical one. It capitalizes a word the word management that is otherwise capitalized in the document, but in one place wasn't capitalized. The PAC changes they do not substantively change the scope of the Procurement Award Committee's jurisdiction, but they provide more substantive changes that are intended to clarify that jurisdiction, in indicating what types of circumstances must exist as prerequisites to the Procurement Award Committee exercising the authority to approve an award without the further approval of either Bifac or the board. Generally, those are the nature of the changes that ask the board to approve the recommendation in the report and approve the amendments to those charter documents.
Do we have a mover? Adele, a seconder. Linda. Any discussion? All those in favor? You might have to put the screen up.
Can you put up the grid screen, Charmaine? Thank you. I see Ms. Douglas, Councillor Fletcher, Ms. Emery, Councillor Nunziata, Mr. Campbell, Mr. McCrae, Ms. Coombs, Councillor Bilau, Mr. Smith, Ms. Jackson, and the Chair. Motion passes.
Great. Thank you very much. 5A.
So Louisa is on the call, is she? If there's any questions. Okay, thank you, Louisa. I'll just introduce this just very briefly, and Louisa's here if there's any questions to answer. The request that you have in front of us is the change order on this particular order is essentially due to a swap out of, rather than securing desktops, we are going to secure laptops. Instead, we provided 50 laptops to the city. As we've gone through COVID and looking at the work, we realized that there is greater opportunity for us to expand the flexible workforce environment. And to do that, we need to change out some of the desktops that we had ordered, so we'll get refunded for those. There's an increased cost to laptops over desktops, and that's essentially what this is all about. So it's not a net increase, it's just changing the type of technology we have. And open to answer any questions that the board may have.
Can I get a mover for that motion first? Adele, thank you. Seconder.
Can you put up the grid?
Seconder, Brian, thank you. Oh, no, Nick. Perfect. Thank you, Nick. Any questions, comments? All those in favor? Oh, go ahead.
So what was the reason again for switching over? I didn't hear the laptops, the desktops to laptops.
Oh, sure. It was COVID has certainly kind of provided us with an opportunity to evaluate flexible workforce. So in terms of more people being able to work from a location other than the office, and so when we looked at that and going forward, even when we come out of COVID, what we want to do is look at having more laptops so that individuals can work from another location other than the office. So that was fundamentally it, Amanda.
Any other questions?
I've got a question.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Kevin, have you been in discussions with Create TO about the office space and going forward as a result of the changes, the workplace changes as a result of COVID? And in terms of, have you been working with them, or have they been talking to you about changes
Yes.
to the office environment or the way we organize our workspace?
Yes, they have, and that in part creating more flexibility, John, is part and parcel of some of those discussions.
And is there discussion of the disposal or the that's not the right word of the change of head office location? Is that also part of it?
Yes, that's actually part of the. I forget exactly the name of the modern TO. The modern TO. That's part of the initiative, and 931 is one of the buildings that the city is looking to sell.
Okay, and as a result of of the situation we've been in for the last 6 months, do you have a sense as to the percentage of staff or the number of staff that would not necessarily require to be centrally located in a head office?
I haven't articulated that down to a particular percentage, of it, but certainly, there is an indication that there, less staff. This building was configured in an environment where people came to the office, and in fact, I think that there is less need for that going forward.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Can we put the grid back up? All those in favor?
I see Mr. Campbell, Mr. Smith, Ms. Coombs, Ms. Imrie, Ms. Douglas, Councillor Nunziata, Ms. Jackson, Mr. McCrae, Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Bilau, and Chair. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. 5B.
Louisa, do you just want to summarize this very briefly for the board?
Yep. Good morning, everybody. It's nice to see everybody today. So I'm seeking approval of a change order of up to $6.1 million for the extension of TCHC's current agreement with Bell Canada. This agreement will provide integrated telecommunications infrastructure and related services for a 5-year period commencing on October 1st, 2020. So Bell Canada provides services under this agreement for our voice communication systems, all of our internet connectivity, and our wide area network. It does service our data centers. These products and services under this agreement are vital to the organization. Our current agreement with Bell Canada is set to expire on September 30th, 2020. TCHC has been working with Bell since 2011, and we've been utilizing the City of Toronto contract to obtain favorable pricing because of economies of scale. And so Bell Canada has been providing all those services, voice and data connectivity to all of our residential buildings, our corporate offices, internet services, and data centers. So there is some savings with this agreement under our current services. So we expect to save about $15,000 per month for ongoing costs, about $180,000 per year, or $900,000 over the period of 5 years. But we also are expanding our network to incorporate our new service hubs, and we will require some additional services. So this new lower negotiated contracts from the City of Toronto will be able to provide those services at greater cost reduction.
So why is it described as a change order?
So
I don't understand that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just don't understand.
Say, sorry, was that John? Was that your question?
No, it's Tim. Sorry.
Oh, Tim. Sorry.
No,
sorry,
but that would have been my question.
Yeah, it rather than writing and it's a procedure that the City of Toronto does as well. Rather than writing a new contract with Bell, we extend the existing contract. The language is in that, and so that's why it's technically a change order to the contract as opposed to a new contract.
But formally, we're extending the term of the agreement, originally 10 years, adding a 5-year term.
Yes, exactly.
With some savings related to what had been the prior monthly charges.
Correct.
And an extension of services in addition.
Yes.
Okay. I have a question. I do have a question.
Please go ahead, John.
So the original award was for $3 million over the last, or from October 2010 to 2015. And And then there was a sizable jump. It almost doubled in value. And I'm just wondering, to what do we attribute that, the increase that took place? So now we're paying, I mean, it looks like we're stuck into this 6 million. Why has this not been tendered out to other possible providers?
Lucy?
So I can go back and provide some information as to the original scope of that agreement in 2011. I would assume, but I can't answer specifically to the board right now, that we've added services and that's the results of the increase. But I can go back and provide that information to the board.
So why hasn't this been tendered out to other providers such as TELUS or Bell or TELUS or Rogers or Shaw? Why have we not? Why has there not been an open bidding process on this?
So the City of Toronto continues to negotiate very favorable rates. It is very challenging to make a service change with respect to our site. So it takes a number of weeks to be able to bring in a new provider. There are some internal costs that are associated with that. So even if we were able, we believe that this is the most favorable rate based on the City of Toronto's negotiations with Bell. We also have other providers in other locations. Bell isn't the only one providing services to TCHC.
So we're piggybacking on a City of Toronto process with this?
Yes, we are.
So I'm still unclear as to why an RFP doesn't go out. Does this mean Bell has the contract in perpetuity just because the City of Toronto has done the same thing? Because, I don't know if there's a potential savings, but I think it's incumbent upon us as a board and as an organization to allow other providers to bid on the business. And it might be a saving of $500,000, it might be a saving of $1 million, it might not be a saving at all, but we don't know unless there's a bidding process. And for us just to say, well, the City of Toronto has done that, that doesn't necessarily mean that the City of Toronto has taken the correct position.
So there are associated costs with switching providers. So we do require to be able to replace circuits. We have to do some internal work in order to change providers. We did factor that in. It would take us about 4 weeks per site to be able to make that change. We would also have to go through that. So we have a number of sites.
So you're saying that if we were to make a change, if there was a bidding process and we were to make a change, there would be some inconveniences for a period of time and there would be some costs incurred. But that would only happen unless we had a bidder that was coming in under this particular contract.
Yeah, that's correct.
I can't support this.
Tim, it's Paula. Can I ask a question, please?
Of course.
Thank you. I just wanted to be clear, the length of the original contract, I'm assuming that was a 10-year contract?
It's 5 years.
The original contract was 5. And then there's a provision there to extend in the contract. Was there a provision in the original contract? I'm sorry, I can't get it all up in front. So it was renewed once after 5 years. And this is
correct.
And this is the second renewal. And was that provided for in the contract or the RFP?
So yes, I believe in the original master service agreement with the City of Toronto and Bell that there was provisions in there for renewal.
So when's the next Bifac meeting?
It's in September.
Yes.
So it sounds like there's some questions that need to be answered. I wonder if we could refer this to Bifac to review and make a conclusion.
I think it would just be good to know if that was in that contract, Mr. Chair.
No, I agree. To answer your questions and
thank you.
John's. Yeah,
Mr.
absolutely.
Chair, if staff could also provide information to Bifac on when was the last time the city themselves also went for tender on this?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question.
Yes, Amanda?
I just wanted to know what the costs are for switching over to another provider.
Yeah,
Is it-
no, I think that's a good question, and I think all of those need to be, I'm sure Louise is taking notes to be answered at Bifac as this is discussed there.
I didn't expect
Yeah,
that.
I'm taking notes. Absolutely.
Is that the motion, Mr. Chair?
Can I just say something?
Yeah,
It's Councillor Nunziata. Can I just say something?
of course, please
Yeah.
proceed.
So I believe that when the contract was negotiated, went for an RFP, that was part of the report on shared services with KPMG. Am I correct? With the City of Toronto?
Are you talking about the 2010 award, Councillor?
Yeah. Yes, that was part of the shared services with the KPMG report. Was that part of that?
I can't answer that question. We can find that out unless Terry.
It's fair to say that if it wasn't part of that recommendation has informed staff's conduct in looking for those kind of opportunities.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just add that we generally try to leverage what the City of Toronto has negotiated, as I'm sure do other agencies within the city, because it leverages, there's scale and pricing advantageous with scale.
Perhaps that could be one of the things that gets addressed when it goes to Bifac, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Agreed, and Louisa has taken another note.
Thank you.
I
So-
have, thank you.
Can we have a motion, someone to move it, sorry? John,
I'll move
seconded. Seconder, Amanda, thank you. All those in favor, please put up your hand.
I see Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Nunziata, Mr. Campbell, Ms. Emery, Ms. Coombs, Councillor Bilau, Mr. Smith, Ms. Douglas, Ms. Jackson, Mr. McCrae. Motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. Item 6A, please.
So this is the lease renewal for Carl Hall.
So Sheila, I'll lead it off, and Mr. Murray is available to provide more detail. This is a 5-year lease renewal on the facility at 35 Carl Hall Road that is home to facilities management, procurement, and finance. It is a 5-year lease. We have approximately 300 staff located in permanent workstations in this building. The original lease was between HSI and Downsview Park. It started in 2011. It was assigned to TCHC with the consent of Downsview Park and has been extended, renewed, and amended as required. This current lease will reach the end of its term December 31st, 2020, with the option to renew for one additional 5-year term, which we're recommending that the board exercise. As noted in the report, and Director John Campbell referenced, the City of Toronto has launched Modern TO, a citywide real estate strategy office portfolio optimization plan, which considers not only 931, but also pieces of the staff, not the entire staff complement, but pieces of the staff that are currently housed in Carl Hall. So the implementation of Modern TO through discussions that we've had for them is planned to roll out, be phased in over the next 3 to 5 years, and this lease coincides with that longer-term plan that the city is exercising. So the report is there for your approval, and Mr. Murray is available to answer any questions.
Board members, any questions, comments?
It's Nick here. Just two questions, sort of more overall questions. As it relates to the city's plan, I know the next motion, there's a space that's not related to the modern TO, et cetera. What distinguishes what is included and not included? And then sort of a secondary question, does that plan necessitate TCHC to sort of always to be in line or be included in that plan automatically?
we believe that it is to our advantage to be a piece of that plan. It will put us into modern facilities that are flexible and contemplate some of the new work arrangements that we're learning a whole lot about through COVID. It will also bring us closer with the city as our shareholder and other agencies that also serve the city. The groups that are contemplated being part of that plan are largely administrative head office functions. So in this building at 35 Carl Hall Road, we have a number of tech facilities, a shop facility that wouldn't be part of the relocation to the proposed modern TO site, but the administrative function that is at Carl Hall could potentially be relocated. We're working through all those details with modern TO now, looking at staff, where they're currently located, what our long-term plans are, and how we will accommodate going forward a flexible work arrangement to minimize the need for square footage.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Adele.
Can I just ask what the increase is?
So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Murray for that, but I do know that it is a very aggressive lease rate. Alan, you could comment?
Sure. Thank you, Sheila. Yes, it is a very good lease rate. We do have, just looking for the exact, like we're paying as low as $7.75 a square foot in the renewal of the 2021 term, which then goes up to a total of $9.50 over the 5 years.
No, I'm asking what is the increase based on what we're currently paying?
Oh, I see. I don't actually have the exact payment that we're making today, but I can certainly find that out. But I think we're in around that. It's definitely within that that lower range.
The $7.
I'll definitely get that information. Sorry, Sheila?
It's in and around $7 a square foot.
Oh, okay. So we're going from $7 a square foot up to $7.75 in Unit 1 and $8.50 in Units 3 and 4.
Which is a very good lease rate in the City of Toronto.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
John, seconded.
Yes.
Nick, all those in favor? Need the grid screen up.
Stop sharing. I see Ms. Campbell, Mr. Smith, Councillor Avila, Ms. Coons, Douglas, Ms. Emery, Councillor Nunziata, Ms. Jackson, Mr. McCrae, and Councillor Fletcher. The motion passes unanimously.
6B.
The next, and again, Alan is here for questions. The next lease is at 90 Wildcat Road, and it is intended to provide space for our CSU unit, the a central space for the access control team, the dispatch unit, which is currently at Shooter parking unit, and the West District unit and investigations team. So bringing those groups together will provide for efficiencies, better work accommodations. We have had some health and safety issues emerge in the current location for dispatch at 275 Shooter and health and safety issues at 30 Falstaff. So this lease will bring folks together that need to work together and will provide healthy and safe work environment for them. The space will also be shared with office services to use it as a warehousing space for things that can't be accommodated at Carl Hall. So it is a 5-year term with an option to renew for one additional 5-year term, annual rental rate of $266,000, fit-up costs of $2.1 million, and the landlord has agreed to cover 15% of those fit-up costs. It will also free up space, shooter and fall staff for us to reclaim and repurpose. And given, as Director McCrae indicated, CSU, given their function, is excluded from the City of Toronto's Modern TO project.
Any questions or comments from any board member?
Yes, I have a question, Councillor Nunziata.
Please proceed.
Can you explain repurpose 30 Falstaff?
So at 30 Falstaff currently, CSU has their West Region dispatch team. So that dispatch team will be coming out of 30 Falstaff, freeing that space up for us to repurpose, possibly for tenant functions, tenant use, and we'll move them to this new location.
So that will be available for community space then for the Falstaff buildings?
That's correct.
Okay, well, that's great news. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Yes, so you're saying that we're centralizing everything, we're centralizing the entire city's operation?
Sorry, Councillor, could you repeat that?
I thought I heard you saying that you're centralizing this, so you're centralizing the whole city's operation?
No, I'm sorry if I was unclear. It's the West District unit. That's a primary function that's coming out of Falstaff, along with dispatch, which is currently out of Shooter, and two smaller teams, an access control team and a parking unit.
So how many people are going to be in this office?
So the total complement for CSU is 272. So this site, West District, plus these smaller functions will contain about a third of that.
We want CSUs inside an office. I mean, they're supposed to be out in the communities.
They're out on the road. So the West District station has their lockers, showers, touchdown space for them to marshal out of, but you're right, they are on the road in our buildings, in our communities.
So did you reach out to Create TO to see if there's any city facilities that could be used before entering into this lease? Like, did we look into any of the city's real estate to see if there's anything that we can use?
So we did make a request to the city to see if they had available space. They did not in this area at this rate.
Any other questions? Comments? Great. Can I get a motion to?
Okay, I do have one more question. Sorry. So we are renting from Joe Pace, the landlord. Is that correct?
That's correct. They own the facility.
And they're renovating the facility?
They are, and they're contributing 15% of the renovation costs.
And
Tim?
is this was something that was tendered, or how does this work?
So we went out looking for space. They have space in a location that meets our needs at an aggressive lease rate. We did a cost estimate for the fit up for the space and negotiated their contribution of 15% for the landlord's contribution to fit up.
Was that Brian I heard asking?
Yes. Okay. I just was waiting to I had finished. Are these costs additional over above, or are these net costs?
These are costs that are, CSU has a budget for operations. These are costs that are, the rental cost is a cost that is contained within their current budget. The capital costs will be a charge to the corporate capital budget.
But I guess my question is, are there savings on the space that's being freed up?
Yes,
Or
there are operating savings for CSU, but also an opportunity for us to fit that space up for the use of tenants.
So were we paying rent on that space, or is it just internal space?
No, the space was internal, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Can we get a motion? A mover? Nick, seconder Brian. All those in favor?
I see Mr. Smith, I see the chair, Mr. Campbell, Ms. Imrie, Ms. Coombs, Councillor Nunziata, and Mr. McCray, Councillor Bilow, Ms. Douglas, can we have your vote? Thank you. Ms. Douglas, Ms. Jackson, Councillor Fletcher, you're frozen.
Just say aye, Paula.
Councillor, we've lost your video. Can we have your vote verbally?
We'll put it back on. Yeah, there I am.
Yes, there's her hand. I saw her hand.
Thank you.
Take it and go. Thank you. 6C, sadly referencing snow clearing services.
Don't remind us, Tim. It's going to happen later.
Members of the board, this report is in front of you to bring a revision forward to a previously approved revised contract amount. An error was made in calculating the annual pricing for Group 11 work to be awarded to Protect Property Maintenance. The error occurred when transferring the Group 11 bid pricing to the summary on the submissions form. Rather than listing the annual bid price, only the monthly bid price was recorded. So as a result of this, the contract group for Group 11, approved back in April of this year, only reflected the cost of 5 months and not 5 years of the program. So this recommendation for Group 6, the value of Group 6 to be awarded to Protect was recorded accurately and remains as is. The price for Group 11 is recommended to be adjusted.
Well, actually, we approved this contract, but the reporting to the board had the wrong number.
Correct.
Correct. Correct. Thank you.
Okay.
So can I ask a question?
Of course.
So the money's in the budget. So we're not the correct amount was in the budget for the contract.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, can I have any other comments, questions? Can I have a motion as per the Amanda?
I'll move it.
Seconded by Councilor. Okay, moved by Councilor Nunziata, seconded by Amanda Coombs. All those in favor?
I see Ms. Douglas, Ms. Imrie, Ms. Coombs, Mr. Smith, Councilor Nunziata, Councilor Fletcher, Councilor Jackson, Mr. Campbell, and Mr. McCray. Motion passes unanimously. Oh, and Councilor Bilow. Sorry, Councilor.
Yeah. Okay, we're on to item 7. I'm pretty sure we've got deputations on this.
We do. We have a number of individuals who have indicated that they want to depute as part of today's live session. When you're ready, I can ask government staff to bring the first deputies into the meeting.
Please do.
Chair,
yes.
on this, do we have a letter to the TCHC? I'm sorry.
So
I didn't catch that.
I didn't. Yeah, I missed the question, Councillor.
did we receive any advice on this item?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
There was quite a bit of a long briefing note.
Long briefing email from,
In the package, it just from management.
yeah, okay, thank you.
And a lot of written deputation, just because I went through this really in a detail with some of the history too. So if people haven't had a chance to read it, it's probably worth a good read because it gives a good chronology of.
Yes, I would just wait from the advice from the shareholder, if we have that.
Oh, sorry, Paula.
Got there?
Councillor, or the advice from the shareholder that you asked us to seek at Governance July 21st, we have reached out to the shareholder. We have confirmation from the Tenants First team and the City Manager's office that the refresh model that's proposed fulfills the requirements of the shareholder's direction. They also understand the drop in tenant rep participation. We have confirmed with them that we are no longer looking at electronic voting. We're going to be going to distributing polls and collecting them in the appropriate socially distanced way, building by building. We've also confirmed with them that they will continue to work with us as the shareholders' direction goes through its mandate review to make sure that we stay in alignment. But they do agree that the model as proposed fulfills the requirements of the shareholders' direction.
Did they give you that in writing, Ms. Penny?
Yes, they did.
Do we have a copy of that, please?
You certainly may.
I'm not sure why we don't have it, because that was the board request or committee request. So I think we should have that forwarded. And there's other advice there that we'll get to about first 100 buildings. I'm sure or first 100 or the readies and the not readies.
Yes.
So I think since the committee dealt with this and the committee sent it off for advice, that we should have that advice in front of us, and so should the deputants actually. But maybe it's all very fast and it's under COVID, so I get that all. But could we get that communication, please? The sent to us now while we're hearing the deputants to our emails. Thank you.
Sure, we can do that.
I'll work on that. Well, I can bring the first of the deputants into the meeting, or
that's fine. We can start.
Okay.
Well, just before we do that, is there any other information you want, Paula? I just want to make sure the staff has an opportunity to provide whatever you want so that when we come to discuss it, it's available.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that we have the list of the buildings where that would begin. I'm having trouble accessing all my documents, so have we been provided with that list as per direction from the committee?
So we have gone through the exercise, Councillor, of taking I think it was attachment 5, and prioritizing the communities, either ready to go, in progress, not ready to go. I have a summary of that in the slide presentation, and we can forward the board the summary and the detailed list as well.
That would be great. But I think the advice they were asked for there, that was important. And thank you.
Okay, so maybe you can work on that while we're hearing the deputation. So, Dara, please.
So the first individual who indicated that they wanted to depute in relation to this matter is Ms. Kunzman, Kathy Kunzman. Governance staff, can you bring Ms. Kunzman into the meeting? I'm advised that Ms. Kunzman's not available. The second individual who indicated a desire to depute is Kathy Birch. Can staff bring Ms. Birch into the meeting?
Kathy, are you? Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, directors, and Ms. Penny and Mr. Marshman. The number is 5. For 5 years, we as tenants have endured developing the various models, and I want to make it really clear. People keep referring to it as a single model. There were 4 options for tenants to choose, not just one. So that seems to keep getting lost in the conversation. We as tenants decided what would be best for our communities. We fought to make sure that that option was in place. That's what we wanted. That's what we needed. And when Ms. Penny was acting CEO, she made sure that this company lived up to its original commitment. But for 5 years, we've gone through this. We've seen our buildings wallpapered with posters about engagement, trying to get everybody as involved as can be and that wanted to be. We've gone through a plethora of large engagement meetings, local engagement. It was discussed at various councils and when councils were sitting in place. But it's time to get on with it. We are currently not represented with our site staff. So what happens is that if old representatives are still trying to help their community and stuff, some of the communities have committees and tenant reps that they're ready to get in place. But because nobody is officially in place, site staff don't know who to listen to. They don't know who to go to. Tenants don't need to know who to go to, especially with the reorg. We have to start finalizing some of this stuff. You're leaving your tenants in chaos for 5 years. As a former tenant rep who chose to not run this next time because of the constant chaos and the constant turnover, you get tired of it. But that doesn't mean we don't want to have our voices heard. You must make this happen and give our management and our staff the go-ahead to get this in place so our voices are heard clearly and staff and everybody knows who to go to for what information and get it laid down once and for all. We can't, even though some communities are not ready, they won't even be able to get these action tables active until everybody's in place. Because of COVID, everything got frozen. So now they've got to go back and, remind all the tenants of what's been done so far and where we need to go. It's going to take time. We're already over a year without representation. Enough is enough. Give us what we need. That was the recommendation of the mayor's task force, is to listen to the tenants and get us what we need. So please follow that direction and vote to move this forward. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Any questions on the board? No, thank you very much. Do we have the next one, Dara?
I just have a question. Sorry, Tim, I do have one.
Okay.
She's been writing to me and I've been reading all our materials. And I'm just, when you say things have been chaos for 5 years, I agree. It's been very chaotic. We now have the new model, Ms. Birch, the new organizational model where we have 3 centralized general managers. We have a focus on tenants that we didn't have before. Tenants First is there. And would you assume that the new tenant engagement model should fit really closely with the new model of our hubs, with the new model of having a tenant service coordinator attached to every hub, so that actually tenants have far more access to TCHC in a real way than they have had in the past. So that the model that we're designing here and that you're promoting is totally integrated with the hub model. Is that your expectation?
It's not only my expectation, but I believe it will work. But you have to get it in place first. You have to get the reorg done. You have to get the engagement done. Lots of things look great on paper. There's going to be tweaks. There's no doubt. You can build a brand new building, but you still have to tweak it after it's built. This is no different. You're building a more integrated service, then get it built so that we can get the final tweaks, so that we can find out where the gaps are that may have not been able to be seen. Then you tweak it so that it works better. But if you don't get it in place, Councillor, none of it works.
So, and you've hit the nail on the head with COVID, because everything was on a good path. Our hubs were all getting done, and bang, everything is stopped and was only able to meet virtually. So I just want to say hello to you here today. But the reorg that happened last year, do you think that that's a better model of organization for TCHC? Have you noticed that that seems to streamline things a bit for tenants?
Okay, so I personally find this, I was around before the centralization. So I see this going back to the centralization didn't work. So this is bringing it back into more control at the local level, which is what we had before. And so my hopes are that it will give more service to tenants, and we can maybe get faster answers instead of everything having to go up the food chain. And because centralization, you know, when staff have certain criteria that they're only allowed to handle, and it's a small sliver before it has to move up, that just takes time. Tenants don't get answers that way. This way, hopefully, we'll get, I would think that you should be able to get answers faster. It looks good on paper, and to a certain point it worked before, but again, I don't want to lead anybody to think that it's going to be perfect, because it's not, because you have people involved and people aren't perfect.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
See you in person someday soon, I hope.
Oh, someday. Let's hope we can get back into the meetings in person. That would be nice.
Any other questions or comments? Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dara, we have the next deputant.
Yes, the next deputant is Zamani Ra.
Hello. Hello? Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so greetings, everyone. I trust that all is well with you and yours. My name is Zamani Ra, and I'm honored to present this deputation as a representative of people who would allow me to speak on their behalf, ones who have passed on, ones who remain and are still fighting in their own way to challenge and change the system and change the status quo, and also those who simply trust that I can say what needs to be said better than they feel they can in this moment. The current tenant engagement refresh process is just that, refreshing. There are people all over TCH communities who are experiencing a time of incredible change and are in need of a refresh in a myriad of ways. In that light, I actually need to align the tenant refresh along the lines of social justice, anti-oppression, and anti-Black racism, especially given what's taking place within the context of the pandemic and particularly as it relates to racialized people. The refresh can serve as a valuable tool to help transform TCH into a space unlike any other we've seen in North America. But before that happens, I have some questions that require consideration and answers. Note, lip service, good intention, well-meaning white folks' words and sentiments, and multi-culti parties will no longer serve as a suitable address to what I'm about to propose. Currently, in my building, we have a letter posted up on behalf of CEO Mr. Kevin Marshman. In that letter, among many things, it says, and I quote, "2/3 of tenants and more than half of our staff identify as a member of a racialized minority. Our values of respect, inclusion, diversity, and fairness must be at the heart of everything we do," end quote. What does that mean exactly? Does that mean that you are looking to change the representation around the current board governance table and TCH's C-suite or executive office to reflect the demographics you serve? Have you called in qualified experts to help you shift not only the conversation going forward, but the actual outcomes of the staff and the tenants you serve? Have you asked for policy change in all departments to include an equity or anti-racism, anti-oppression lens? And what accountability measures have you put in place so that we can all see the change you are proposing to make? I'm not talking about simply making a dent here. I'm actually talking about making a difference. The engagement refresh is on that track. But like the leaves of a tree, they are only as strong as the nutrients it gets from its roots. You all are at the root. You see, it's not enough that you write a letter with the right words, sentiments, and even resource links. You need to let us know that you have all buckled yourselves in for an uncomfortable ride while we make these necessary changes. Note, uncomfortable does not mean unsafe, but we need to shake up the thing. Board members, I identify as a Black, cisgendered, able-bodied, heterosexual woman. When I did my first presentation to you, July 31st, 2018, I made a recommendation that may have been heard but not acknowledged or taken into serious consideration. I suggested that both the TCH board as well as senior level management at TCH hire Kika Ojo-Thompson. She is the principal consultant at Kojo Institute. Dare I say that this lady is a champion in the arena of equity and inclusion work. I'll share her contact details with you a second time. Given the climate of the times, making me present again and share her info for a third time will definitely make me and the members I represent easier to believe that your integrity cannot be honored. You don't want that problem. So somebody, please, at least make the call. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments?
Hi, Timothy. Thank you so much for your deputation. Truly appreciate your insistence on action over words. I have a question for you. When you talk about ensuring true representation and change is a context of tenants representation, what would you suggest to ensure that the racialized tenants are represented in the leadership of the tenants process?
Yeah, I think because I'm not 100% clear on what is currently happening, I think it's harder for me to determine that because I'm not 100% clear on what's happening currently. But I definitely do think that what I was talking about in my presentation, where we have, a policy in place that makes sure that ensures that we're gathering the voices of people who we don't normally see making contributions to what changes or what movements need to be made. It's a bit harder, to be specific about what that change might look like, which is beautiful because I'm not, we haven't gone through the process yet. But it definitely, we need to make sure that.
Yeah, it's a problem with WebEx. We can still hear you. Would you support targets? So would you support if, for example, as Kevin's letter indicated, there is a certain percentage, the majority of folks are racialized who live within TCHC. Would you support a recommendation that says that X percent of folks being elected should be representative of the tenant population? And I know there may be others who want to speak, so let me just say this as well. We did hear you. I remembered when you presented in July. It was probably my first or second board meeting. And so yes, this board is very much interested in ensuring the faces around the board is representative of the city of Toronto. And as board members, we are absolutely committed to ensuring that senior leadership of TCHC becomes increasingly more reflective of the tenants who reside within TCHC's communities. So thank you for reinforcing that. Some of us on the board know Kike and her work. I second your recommendation. Earlier we heard from our staff at TCHC that anti-racism training is being implemented, and one of the questions I will have for management, not during this conversation, but outside of this meeting, is what kind of anti-racism training and who it is that they've engaged in that process. So thank you for reminding us of the resources that exist in the communities, including PKOJ and OJ Institute, and for raising some of these issues with us.
Thank you so much.
Anybody else? Amanda?
Just a quick comment that I just wanted to say that, oh, sorry, I thought you said me. Sorry. It's hard on this with the hands up. Go ahead if it's somebody else.
No, we'll go Linda and then Amanda.
I'll be very quick. Sorry, I couldn't see you, Amanda. I just want to thank the deputant. I too remember your deputation previously and commit to following through on your recommendations. What I really liked about your comments was don't stop what we're doing. You know, a refresh is a refresh. Keep going. But actually, right now we have the opportunity to ensure that that anti-racism, anti-oppression lens. I too have been working with Kika, and I would recommend that we actually look at either her or other people in the field to actually make sure that we're incorporating the commitment that's posted in the lobbies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.
Hi, Zamani. I just want to take this time to thank you for the work that you do in your community. I know that you do a lot of work with the tenants there to ensure that their needs are being met and that their voices are being heard. I hear a lot of great things about you in the community. And I also like to thank you for this deputation and bringing again awareness to many of the issues around Black racism and oppression issues that a lot of tenants face within TCHC. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you very much. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, Tim, I don't have a question. I'm very glad the deputy came back and reminded us of this critical work. I just have one question because we have the item up and we wanted to get more information. And I'm sorry, it's very hard on WebEx, as we're all saying. It's really difficult. I cannot find the answers to the questions that were sent from the tenant committee. And it might just be me, but I just want to flag that so I'm not doing this once we get into our discussion. If I can please have all of that somehow communicated. Thank you. I guess everybody who's looking sees the item number 7 and the recommendations from the Tenant Services Committee and then the reports attached. So just looking for that information that was requested, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much.
Sorry, which information? The city council response or the city?
To permit prior tenant representation to lapse, decision to initiate virtual voting, confirmation forwarded to the shareholder on proceeding with online elections, in particular because many people might not have access to online and it may cut out tenants. Advice wish to give on the proposed tenant engagement. I think we have that on the chart. Which communities are ready to proceed? In other words, there's a second report that says here's everybody that it was fulsome and they're going to start now. We're going to start with these folks and any further advice. Those are pretty clear. And maybe it's me, certainly could be me, but I just don't see those 6 things answered kind of in writing in the report. And if it is, let me know or resend. I just can't find it. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I can't. Thank you.
So sorry, we apologize to the last deputant. It doesn't appear there were any more questions of you, so thank you for your deputation. Do we have more deputants
in there?
Is it? So now, sorry, the questions, Sheila, did you get that?
I thought there were quite a few more deputants, so
Yeah, no, agreed. I just want to make sure that we get your information.
It's not my information, it's committee request. So if that is.
Well, same thing. I meant the issue you raised.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the information that was requested at governance, I'll cover off in the presentation, and we'll follow up with the detail in writing to the board.
And you sent around, the city email I saw.
I haven't
from
seen
Chris
that yet.
Phibbs. From Chris Phibbs.
Sorry, Councillor, I sent it to your Councillor email address. I've now sent it to
You know
your
what?
other
I don't
email
have
address
access
as well.
to that, Dara. You know, I have no access to that. So it has to be to my personal. Thank you so much.
And I've sent it there. The next deputant
you.
is, my pleasure. Next deputant is Susan Gafka.
Hello.
Good morning.
Great. Thank you. Please proceed. Thank you. Yep, we can. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to try to get through this more than 5 minutes. First of all, I want to dedicate this deputation to the deceased tenant representatives who have died since March during the pandemic. Vicky from 200 Wellesley, James from 330 Jarvis, Dan from 341 Bloor West. I wasn't supposed to take a moment of silence, but I think they deserve it. I've worked with them for years. The background, the Tenant Engagement Reference Committee originally revised the tenant representation in 2009 to 2011. At that time, the CEO and the board did not implement that revised election plan due to viability at the time. The last tenant elections were in 2015 and were held using the previous model that was in place to ensure that we could elect tenant board representatives. Those elections were rushed without community engagement in the summer, leaving multiple vacancies and no mechanism to fill those vacancies, nor alternates to step in when required. No evaluation of strengths or weaknesses, gaps or successes. The particular model you're looking at today addresses these gaps. Tenant representatives were elected for a 3-year term. I'm looking for my spot here, which was extended twice for 1 year. And when the council was suspended last June, only a handful of representatives met regularly. Implementing tenants first, which that is the question on the table, was adopted by City Council on July 4th, 2017, and they had no responsibility for tenant engagement. They did set up an advisory committee of tenants to guide that process, and the closest they got was to create an interim appointment process for the 2 tenant board members. And it was interim. I just want to remind you of that. Council, I'm looking, I've got more than, and it's also, all this information is on the TCHC website. In July 10th, 2017, this report was approved at Resident Services Committee, and on July 19, I've got 2019 they approved, but I think it's 2017. Shortly afterwards, this model was approved by the board after much delay. There were questions at governance about the citywide engagement committee, And that was the framework, that is the framework, for those of you who read the report, to create an accountability and evaluation mechanism and to develop strategies and tools to measure the success of the tenant engagement system. So I really wanted to address that question. Adding two tenant board representatives as a committee suggested is potentially a good idea, and building on the previous deputation, understanding the role of power dynamics, anti-oppression, and anti-racism approaches, which I've deputed on repeatedly over the last couple of years. I don't know where I'm at on time, but I'm at my conclusion, so thank you. So I have a lot more in my deputation, but in conclusion, for Dan, for James, for Vicky, and let me add Robert and Joan, who deceased in the 6 months prior to COVID at from the Communications Committee. We owe adopting this tenant refresh and moving forward. We owe it to their legacy, to the tenants they serve, and for improved tenant engagement systems where everyone has the opportunity to participate.
Great, thank you.
I don't know where I'm at on time.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
Yes, I wonder if I could just confirm. Hi, Susan. How are you? Is that Dan?
Councillor Fletcher, nice to see you. Nice to talk to you.
This is you too. Is that Dan King that passed away by any chance? From 341 Bloor?
Yes. From a tragic fall that got infected, and we're just going to have, yes, that was Dan from Senator Crow.
And I think that the board should be aware that Dan was a former tenant board member, and we should have a formal motion. He served a number of years on the board, elected by tenants, and it's very sad to hear about everybody who's passed away during COVID, but as a former tenant board member, we do have to acknowledge that here today. So thank you for letting us know, Susan.
I'll second that, Paula. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, and I'm sure that's universal, so thank you. Yeah.
Well, so we never were able to figure out a way to do commemorations and memorials for deceased tenant reps and other tenant leaders, and so that's something else. I mean, a vibrant engagement process would be able to work on.
Okay, so any other comments or questions? No, great. Thank you very much, Susan. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do we have a next deputant?
Yes, the next deputant is Miguel Avila Velarde. Mr. Velarde, Avila Velarde.
Hi, good morning.
Hello, please proceed.
Hi, good morning. Dear Chairman and members of the TCHC board, I will be speaking on item 7, the tenant engagement update. For those who don't know me or first time that is viewing in live stream, my name is Miguel Avila. I am a member of the Regent Park Neighborhood Association. I am a member of the Regent Park Coalition for Community Benefits, and I have been a tenant leader for my building 220 Oak Street since the last 10 years. To all this time since 2010, when I started my activism, I have participated in several tenant engagement consultations. It has been an interesting exercise since then, and I'm glad that today we are considering that the future tenant election process to be online and electronically, because we're still in a pandemic. So I appreciate that you guys have selected this process because it remains a safe process for everybody. All right. So I want to thank the previous deputant, Susan and Kathy Birch, and the other lady who spoke well about anti-racism policies. I think David Douglas spoke on this item to me online, the previous deputation I made at the board. Thank you for that, David Douglas. One of the things I want to mention to Kathy Birch, members of the board, is that I'm super excited that my building, 220 Oak Street, has been selected to be the hub service delivery model for this area of Regent Park. I'm happy to tell you that during the COVID-19, there were some delays during the renovations, but it's almost done. It's almost done. So I'm excited to learn when is going to be the next opening ceremony for this hub service delivery model. And I concur with the previous deputant that the new building committee in item 7, attachment page number 2, the hub service delivery, it will be awesome, because that way the tenants elected for the building committee, which I am a member of, but because of COVID, all the process was put on hold, and other reasons. So I also want to thank Mr. Mendez for clarifying and putting questions that I have with regards to the tenant engagement model in Region Park, which is different from the rest of the city. We only have two tenant selection process, and we have selected building committee memberships. And another comment I would like to make is with regards, one second, please. I lost it. Item 7, page 4. No, item 7, attachment 4. I think it's regards the role of the tenant leaders. I think all the tenant reps have ceased to be members of the tenant buildings, but in my case, I have stayed on as a tenant leader, which I hope that will continue as we select the new tenant process. And if I'm correct, I come to a conclusion to say that I am happy to participate in these consultations in years before, and I look forward for the improper implementation, because we have been without proper leadership and during this time. And I thank the staff for keeping us an update on the tower renewal project for 220 Oak Street. Thank you so much, and I thank also for the TCHC Development Committee for incorporating new values and suggestions to incorporate in our future monitoring, oversight, and terms of reference that is currently happening be assumed since the start of COVID. We have been working diligently to serve the community, and it is our goal to achieve a community benefits agreement that will be benefit for members of Region Park for phases 4 and 5. I can't wait for the board to give us the name of the next developer. That will be awesome too. So thank you so much for listening to my deputation, guys.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the board? No, thank you. Thank you, Miguel.
You're welcome.
Annie, do we have another deputant?
Yes, the next deputant was going to be Alicia Griffith, but I understand she's not available. And the next deputant following Ms. Griffith is Kadeen Bankasing. Ms. Bankasing?
Doesn't sound like it.
No.
Any other deputations?
Ms. Bankasing is
Oh, hang on.
Hello?
Hello? No. Okay.
Miss Katie?
Go ahead. You?
No, okay.
Okay.
Doesn't sound like
We're
it.
having a technical issue with respect to Ms. Bankasing's deputation.
Okay. Is that the complete deputation?
Sorry, I'm in the voice.
I tell you what,
do you want me to try and see if I can sort that out, or do you want to move into Ms. Penny's presentation?
I think we should move to the presentation.
are we good to go?
I'm having troubles getting hold of this, of the final deputant.
Yeah, so go ahead, Sheila.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So as was evidenced by the 35 deputations that came in on the tenant engagement refresh when we took the report to governance July 21st, followed by 26 deputations received today, tenant engagement is a critical issue for our tenants that we need to respond to. The tenant engagement refresh has a long history. Today I'll walk you through some significant milestones, what the original mandate was, how tenants participated in that mandate in the design of the system in 2018, how they participated in the implementation of the model through 2019 into 2020. I'll walk you through how the system is designed to work, how it aligns with restructuring, and I will close with the additional information that was requested at governance July 21st. So by way of background, tenant engagement has its history, has its beginnings through City Council approving the shareholders' direction in 2001, requiring the company to maintain a democratic system of tenant participation to provide for a tenant council structure, tenant input for decisions at corporate and local levels, tenant input setting local priorities and service levels, and also included for tenant representation at our board. The model that is in front of you today fulfills that mandate. In 2015, the company initiated a review of its tenant engagement system through consultation with tenants, and in 2015, the Mayor's Task Force also reported out and recommended a strengthened system of tenant engagement. In 2016, the citywide Tenant Staff Engagement Advisory Committee was formed and got to work. In 2017, the Tenant Services Committee adopted a report from that citywide advisory committee that had 52 recommendations. In April of 2018, Tenant Services Committee received the corporate response to those 52 recommendations. There were a couple of updates in November and in January. March 29th of 2019, the committee received an update and approved a recommendation that each of the buildings would have the option to elect the model that served it best from 4 options. In May of 2019, last year, Tenant Services Committee approved the tenant engagement system structure, and the model that is in front of you today was approved by the board back in July of 2019, so about a year ago now. In October last year, there was an extension of the timeline from Q3 to Q4 to accommodate the corporate restructuring, and in December through February, there were updates provided, and staff got to work on readying the system for an election that was being planned for April 16th, 2020. COVID intervened. That was not possible, and the tenant engagement election and selection was delayed in June. The board received an update on where we're at with the system and a recommendation to go forward. The board referred the matter to governance for review. So that's the history of the tenant engagement refresh across the company. I'm now going to spend a few minutes on the original mandate. It is important. The vision of the citywide Tenant Staff Engagement Advisory Group was to design a tenant engagement system that was diverse, inclusive, collaborative, that increased tenant participation in local decision making. The core values of that citywide group: respect, equity, informative, inclusive, and collaborative, guided the work Next slide. And in 2018, the recommendations coming from the citywide group were put to design with further tenant engagement. It started at the building and community level. Tenants were invited to come together to brainstorm on local priorities through a series of lobby and community intercepts. Those local priorities were prioritized. There was a tenant experience survey, community forums where tenants were consulted on key recommendations of the citywide group. They were also consulted on the development of the tenant volunteer policy, and based on those consultation results, regional forums came together to present the draft engagement model volunteer policy and seek tenant feedback. Next slide, please. So in 2018, that tenant participation in the design process responding to those 50-wide recommendations looked like this. The community meetings, consulting on priorities, the process through lobby and community intercepts to prioritize those priorities, the tenant experience survey, tenant consultation on the volunteer policy, community consultation forums, followed by community feedback forums. So all in all, we have documented that in 2018, 16,631 tenants were involved in that design process. Next slide, please. 2019 through to 2020, there are 3 significant activities that continue to unfold. The community action planning meetings are happening, 6,500 tenants roughly involved in those. Open call information sessions, the first point of engagement for establishing tenant leadership. Those open call information sessions have been completed in a number of communities. We still have work to do there. Next slide, please. The third activity, the local engagement model selection, which started in October of 2019, carried through into early 2020. We've had just under 10,000 tenants participated. 213 communities have selected the building committee model, 85 the tenant representative model, 25 have elected an association model, 3 have elected to have no participation in engagement, and again, we still have work to do in selecting that local engagement model with 22 communities. What's of interest are the participation rates that are on the far right-hand side of the slide. East, West, Central, and Seniors, you can see the number of participants in the local engagement model selection, and the participation rates hovered around 21%. So all in all, through 2019 and 2020, in those 3 activities, we have a record of 18,484 tenants being engaged. Next slide, please. So what does the model look like? It operates at a building and townhouse level, at a community level, at a city level. This is how the model was originally developed. Next slide, please. With the restructuring that was approved by the board last September, we have aligned the tenant service hubs, embedded them within the tenant engagement model so that the building and townhouse levels will roll up to the hub level, which will roll up to the regional level, and from the regional level to the citywide tenant staff governance and oversight committee. Next slide, please. So at a building and townhouse level, tenants will come together with their elected or selected leaders to review ongoing building issues, to monitor the implementation of the local community action plans. At a hub level, those same tenants, elected, selected representatives from the building and townhouse levels will come together to assess service quality indicators. And this is key in the new model that we are implementing through restructuring. Tenants at a very local level, at a hub level, have an opportunity to tell us how we're doing at delivering service in their communities. And at the hub level, tenant leaders will also come together to leverage local resources to support engagement activities. At a regional level, the elected, selected representatives will come together, work with stakeholders and staff to address regional identified priorities. And at a city level, again, tenant leaders will come together to work with staff and stakeholders to hold us accountable to the new structure, as Ms. Gapka indicated, measure the effectiveness of the system and to address overall citywide portfolio level issues. So that is the overview of the history, who's been engaged, how the system will work. The additional information that was requested by governance on the 21st, Councillor Fletcher referenced, has the city been involved through the Tenants First team. We have written confirmation from the Tenants First team and the city manager's office that the engagement system as presented fulfills the current shareholder direction. They have committed to continue to work with us, that's the Tenants First team, to ensure that the engagement system aligns with the requirement of the shareholder's direction, the new shareholder direction that is currently in development. We have also provided the Tenants First team with the implementation plan. We did confirm with them that we don't believe at this time we'll be moving forward with electronic voting. We are working through this now, but we believe it is possible to drop ballots in our buildings and collect those in a socially distanced, safe way. But we did share that implementation plan with the Tenants First team, and we also reviewed with them the number of current tenant that rep vacancies. If I could have the next slide. You asked us at governance to look at our list, our total list of communities, and identify which are ready, which are almost ready, which are not ready. We've undertaken that work. The summary is in front of you now. We have 53 communities that we believe are ready to move forward with election selection, meaning they've selected their model, they have appropriate nominations to elect tenant reps or to form building committees in place. They've had high to moderate tenant participation throughout. The second phase, a very significant number, 172, are in varying states of readiness. We need to get out into those communities and bring them to phase 1 state. Phase 3, a little more work to do in those communities, still a significant number at 111. So as we've moved through the implementation of the tenant engagement refresh to establish tenant leadership disrupted by COVID, we have communities in different phases, but we are prepared to pick up the work and work hard to get it done. So I will conclude with that. And I'll conclude by saying that tenants are in the best position to understand the needs of their communities and the company as a whole. That implementing a democratic system that engages with tenants and their leadership is a high priority for us all if we are to fulfill our mandate and put tenants first. So with that, I'll conclude, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Tim, it's Debbie. Before folks get into the meat of this, just a very practical question. Assuming that of the total, the 11 organizations at phase 3 includes the 3 areas who opted not to participate in any sort of tenant engagement process?
Correct. And that so far, we still have, I believe, 21 communities to connect with. Let's pull that up. To date, we've had 22 communities that have yet to select their model. We've had 3 communities decline participation in tenant engagement.
And what will we do with those 3 communities? Or will they just be rolled up as we look at when we get to the hub model?
So they will be part of a hub. They will have the hub structure, have access to staff through the hub structure.
Okay.
Linda Jackson has a question.
I have a question.
Yeah, just a comment. Thank you very much, Sheila. It was actually for me very helpful to actually have all of the documentation, and it's unfortunate we didn't have the city stakeholder letter, but that actually for me was a further confirmation. I have been involved in this journey since the time I actually joined the board, and I do actually really want to acknowledge that the work of the tenants who have stayed on this. I think that we have demonstrated over time that you can have a model and it can change. But I do actually think it's time for us to move on. I'm not actually sure what the board needs to approve, Tim, and that's really what I'm asking, because I wasn't clear in the preparation documents in terms of this was for information, or what exactly are we approving? And I just to the point of I would like to actually make sure that we actually as a board are supporting that so many of the deputations that basically said move on, you can get it better. It doesn't have to stay static, but it's time for us to actually make sure that we're doing that. And I appreciate, Sheila, that you even through COVID that there's been a lot of opportunities to actually think about how you would continue to engage people, particularly those that are at most risk of being kind of left behind because they might not have access to technology, or they may not be able to engage in the same way. But my question, Tim, is really what is the board being asked at this point, and how can we facilitate that as the tenant service committee would really like this to move forward?
Well, you might, but I don't.
Sorry, I didn't mean to speak for you.
Tim, before you answer Linda's umbrella question, Sheila, what role will the regional managers play throughout this process? You talk about alignment with the restructuring, which is very positive. Will they then oversee the whole processing from the building townhouse level right up to the city representation?
That's correct. So the regional managers will sit at the regional tables with tenants in a regular forum to work on priorities, hear issues, concerns, and move the company forward. They'll also be a party to the citywide consultations that we have with the citywide table. They'll be working daily with their hubs.
Who will be overseeing the voting? And I'm very glad that you decided to move away from electronic voting, given the gaps, given the inequities in terms of who has access and those kinds of things. But recognizing that this is going to be a significant undertaking, who do you see as having oversight? I was assuming the regional managers will be involved in those kinds of discussions.
So the regional managers have oversight of 4 pillars of service, the 4th being the community safety and support. And within that team, we have CSCs for engagement who have been very actively involved in the refresh since its inception. And it is through those CSCs that we will move tenants from phase 3 through to phase 1. Once we're out in community, we drop ballots. They will be present on site in a socially distanced way to receive tenant ballots, to open the box at the conclusion of the voting to count the ballots with tenants present. So,
very good.
and I think, the advice that we got from the governance table to have us move forward in phases is well considered. Given the different levels of readiness, we will commence with phase 1, learn from it, move to phase 2, phase 3.
Good, and I'm assuming then that you will put in place as well a robust outreach, strategy.
Yes.
Tim, you're muted.
Someone else muted me. I'm sure it was Paula. No,
I don't have that control, or you would so many more time.
Take the words right out of my mouth.
Yes. Of course it wouldn't be Paula. I know she.
No, never. Never.
I mean, it's an information item, but I think given the board's interest and engagement in this issue, we wanted to make sure that, the kind of board had a pretty good sense of what was going on in the plan, and obviously tenants' interest in this. We wanted to make sure that kind of the reasoning, the logic, and the rationale was well understood and well, and the board itself had an opportunity to ask questions, but it is an information item. I don't think Sheila's looking for any approvals per se, but it was kind of that, ultimately a really disaster check, I guess, more than anything else.
Thanks.
Yeah, I have a question now, Tim, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
Thank you. And I'm glad, thank you, Ms. Penny, for recognizing that the governance committee assisted you with phasing and online voting, because the board obviously needs to be very interested in what happens with our tenants. And too often we're sometimes, or in the history of this organization, not been that interested. And Ms. Jackson, when I said you might be, I'm not, I want to make sure we get this right. And one of the questions is and I'm pleased to see this 83, and I'm pleased to see the shareholders say they support this phased approach, would be of the 83 communities that would vote, there may be new CSCs that have now been assigned in those communities. Would I be right on that? Because the CSC, no, let me just go back for a second. I understand that you've told us that everybody's now in place under the new organizational model. Am I right? Like everybody's got the role now. You've hired everybody that's in the new model.
That's correct. We have hired everyone. The CSCs for engagement, we've added to their complement 5 individuals.
That's
but
fine.
We did make a decision to not change their relationships with communities. So the CSCs for engagement are aligned with the hub structure, but they are working with the communities that they've always worked with. We didn't want to disrupt that relationship until we get tenant leadership in place, and then we will work with the CSC for engagement if there are any tweaks that we have to make.
So that would, I can't understand that. You've hired people as the CSCs under the new org model. Have there been
5? We added 5. They've been distributed.
That's just talking about the alignment of the CSCs in the new org model. It's aligned now with the hubs, and those people, let's say, there's a continuity of those CSCs with the communities that around tenant engagement. So they're not brand new people in all these positions. They're aligned. Are they or not? Don't forget the 5.
They are not brand new people.
Thank you.
They're aligned with their community.
They're aligned with their communities in the new hub model. And so they will have been, in those 83 communities, they will be very intimately involved in where things are sitting with the 83. Would I be right to say that?
Correct.
Correct. So then you feel confident then proceeding with the 83, it will be a robust, well-populated election in whatever model that was selected. Is that right?
Correct.
Great. So that's really clear, and it will be, they will run the vote with going door to door and making sure people get the ballots and everything else.
That's right.
And there's a criteria for who can or cannot present themselves as a tenant representative. Has that been applied yet? The criteria model that's part of the package, as far as who's who can stand for election. So have you cleared every single person who in the 83 who has indicated they're interested to stand for election?
That's my understanding from staff, that those 83 communities have cleared tenants ready for election or selection. And the criteria that you referred to are in attachment 7.
Yes. Do you have that in writing now that everything's copacetic?
I am told we do. I haven't had eyes on it myself, but I will.
I'm just checking, because if we're seriously into elections, then you meet the criteria to be able to stand for elections. And it sounds like that's there. So that is good, and it will be an in-person for the 83. Are you thinking that before moving to the next stage that you'll come back a few times and say the 83, like 70 just was fantastic, and we have all these people in place, and this is 13, there was some issues, and here's the next tranche that's coming forward based on the criteria of being ready? And the criteria being ready, I heard you say that there's kind of sufficient people. So in one community of mine, there's 220 units, there's 400 and some people, and 7 people came forward. I would not call that ready. I don't know, would you call that ready?
Well, that's a difficult question, because in a democratic process, if there are 400 people eligible to vote and only 7 people come out and vote, there's not a lot we can do about that. But what we can do at the front end is make sure that we've given opportunities for people.
I need to interrupt. It's not about the voting. It's about the number of people who came out to select the model.
It's the same thing.
No,
so we will do everything we can through door knocking to get people out.
So are you
telling me? Can't force people to participate.
Not about the voting. It is not about the voting. It's understanding that there was a robust enough outreach. So in the 83, I'm going to assume that they've had a good participation rate, that the CSCs say, yes, we're ready to go, and that you have full confidence that it wasn't rushed or poorly done. That's one of the criteria. It's not about the elections. If one person comes out to vote, that's not my problem. But it's ensuring that everything was in place to establish the system. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and one of the criteria to be ready is high to moderate tenant participation throughout.
Correct. So and throughout and establishing which model you might like. And so I think that sounds pretty good. So are you anticipating you'll let us know how the 83 have gone? And then we'll get some good feedback. As one of the tenants said, just start and then tweak what you need to do. Is that really what you're starting on now with that blessing from the tenants first?
That's correct. And I believe, given the amount of tenant interest in the engagement refresh, that we should be reporting at every tenant services committee with an update to answer the questions that you've outlined. How many have we moved forward with? What have we learned? Who's going next?
That's fantastic. I think so. So I'd like to speak, Mr. Chair.
I think you have been.
No, I've been asking questions, Mr. Chair.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm very happy that we had a chance to, first of all, one of the tenants said it's been chaotic, and this has been going on for a long time. And I was going to ask this question, but I didn't. And it's just, if we review the number of changes in leadership at TCHC, and I hope the tenants that are online and have been so engaged are listening, it has been one roller coaster of a ride. CEOs, COOs, legal counsel, resident services coordinator. Everything has changed constantly over the last number of years. We're now into what I'm going to say, I believe, pretty stable waters, and we have this new organization that I think I'm thrilled about the reorg that Mr. Marshman and Ms. Penny brought to us last fall. I think it's fantastic. And this tenant system can align so perfectly with the reorg. But I believe it's the board's job to make sure our due diligence for tenants is to make sure all those things are in place. And at the governance committee, when I asked specifically, should we really be online voting? That means we might be disenfranchising, all kinds of people. I'm very pleased that that was taken into consideration. And when I suggested that we look at a phased approach to capture those communities, and I'm sure that Ms. Birch and Ms. Gapka are part of those communities that are just chomping at the bit to get this accomplished, that will not slow anything down. But as a board, I think we want to make sure that management is thinking carefully about this, in particular, because of the chaos in TCHC for so many years, and that the city's interest is there for tenants. The city's program is called Tenants First. It's all about aligning everything for delivery of service to tenants in clean, well-managed, healthy communities. So I feel pretty satisfied that we've gotten to a better place than we were. And I do want us to recognize that this has been a bit of a roller coaster, and the tenants have told us that they're strapped in. They've been on the whole ride with us. But we all have to recognize that. And I just have to say personally that at times I've felt that admonished and somehow I'm being anti-tenant if I want to get this right. And I don't know, I don't think you all know on the board, although Ms. Gapka certainly knows and others know. I've stood shoulder to shoulder with tenants when TCHC wanted to sell 600 of their homes, sell 389 Church Street. I'm well recognized as a tenant advocate, including by TCHC management, who haven't always appreciated my positioning. So I'm very clear on that. And with that, I'm happy to proceed with that based on number 1, 83 communities. Number 2, it will be door to door. Number 3, it will be conducted, and I want to be clear, under the new model, by the tenant service, by the CSCs, that it will not be somebody else. It's going to be done in the community, with the community, by the community. Nobody from Revite or nobody from anywhere else in the communities. It's just straight up. Our new model is going to be tested with 83 properties and 83 communities, and I think that's a very good way to start. So with that, I'm happy to move this report based on what we've heard today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Paula. Do I have a seconder for the motion then?
Debbie?
John? Or Debbie, John, whoever, yeah. Any other comments?
Tim, it's Nick. Just in terms of the motion, I'm just looking at the package, and I just want to be clear what motion we're voting on. Is it just to receive the report? There's a motion, at least in my package, receive the information, confirmation whether staff consulted, decision prior to permit prior tenant representation to lapse. I'm not sure if I'm looking at the right place, but there's like several motions and subpoints.
It's on the screen, Nick.
Yeah, it's on the screen.
Okay.
I've drafted the language in the motion more comprehensively, more generally, than to break it down in order to address, because I think this is what makes sense, is that the board acknowledge receipt of the information provided.
That
my only question, and I should pinch myself for doing this, but we have identified kind of ongoing reporting to tenants services just on the implementation. And I'm wondering if we should just say that in the motion to provide up to, perfect, just so that we
I like that idea too, Tim. I was thinking the same thing, that committing to every meeting.
Yeah.
Sorry, just for clarification, where do you want the report to occur? What level, at the board level or at the TSC?
No, TSC. The tenant TSC, yep.
Mr. Chair, now that Nick said that, I did not see that where the relinquishing of the duties of where that was approved, that the,
Does it need to be? I'm just asking Dara.
well, that was to be reported. At what point we agreed to relinquish those tenants' duties would be relinquished formally? Or was it just?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm asking Dara. Do we need a motion to do that, or is?
Well, it was in the original motion from committee, Mr. Chair. That wasn't answered today.
What wasn't answered? Sorry.
Well, everyone's quite right. Tenant reps have not been in place for a while. Long-standing tenant reps that have really given a lot to the community were summarily dismissed in 2019 in May. That motion from governance was to establish on what basis that happened. Was the board aware? Did we approve that as the model in getting rid of everybody? That was a question, and I'm not sure that got answered there.
So let me answer that, and then because I remember being on the board at as things were coming together, and Linda was certainly on the board. So we renewed in 2018. We did the second extension of tenant renewals, and so in 2019. When this came to the committee, the intention was that we would be holding the elections that fall. Two things intervened with that. Probably the most significant thing was not the reorganization, but in fact the federal election that was called after we had anticipated having a general election. And the reason that impacted it was that many of our buildings are polling stations, and our community engagement staff are very much involved in the work of ensuring the tenants, are aware of the election and, the facilities to vote. And so the intention then was that we would do that. We would hold the elections in the spring, and then COVID unfortunately interceded on that. So it was in 2019, we didn't renew or extend the existing tenant representation because we expected the model to be implemented shortly thereafter. And there had been diminishing tenant reps.
Who didn't renew that, Kevin?
The board did not renew an extension of the tenant reps.
Based on your advice?
It was based on the assumption that we were holding the elections in the fall. Yes.
That was in a report. No, that was in a report?
I'd have to go back to the report, but it was certainly.
The only reason I'm on this one, and I don't want to take too much time today, but I do love to close all the loops. You all know that about me. But every single person who's on this board, tenant board members, public members, you are on this board until you are replaced. Until there is city council replaces you, even if you go past your term. I think there was a number of times, I think Mr. Purvis went past his term a number of times. It was renewed and renewed and renewed. And the same with our tenant board members. You may have a date when your appointment is over, but if somebody isn't in your place, then you're staying in that place. And that is just the governance model that we've always used. So to find that all these folks were moved out before they were replaced, I think that's why a number of them are feeling like, what was wrong with me? And we've left the communities without any official. So I think that was probably poorly handled. And I wouldn't mind seeing exactly how we did that. But basically the rule of thumb is until you have somebody else, you're there. And that means Brian Smith, Debbie Douglas, Adele Imrie, Coombs, me, Councillor Nunziata. We're there for our term. And I just think we haven't treated those, however many there were left, maybe 100 people that were very dedicated to their communities very well. They just got fired, and they feel like they were fired and nothing in place. And others are concerned because they say, well, you took them out and you didn't put the new thing in. I agree it was chaotic. I just don't think that was a good practice. And I'm going to say that today. And I think we owe them a thank you for their years of service. And we haven't done that. We've acted like, anyway, I don't want to start, but I have a number of tenant reps that are like in that situation. And they simply didn't have the ability to have a proper send-off for their term or for their service. And since we talk about tenants, I don't see how we need to come back and figure out how we do that for those people.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that, Paula. Maybe Linda, so a conversation we can have at Tenant Services, a certificate of recognition for their contributions over the time that they were there, or something like that.
Absolutely. I can't recall everything that was done at the time. I do recall some thank yous at the time, but I honestly cannot actually. We'd have to look at the minutes from those meetings. But I do agree with you. I think recognition is important, but also making sure that we're actually following the right process. Because I think some people wanted, weren't satisfied enough, rightly so, with just recognition.
I don't think we followed a good process. I'm going to say that here.
Well, let's not speculate. Let's find out what happened.
My opinion, but we can look at committee. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, okay.
Councilor Nunziata.
Oh, I was just going to say, so we have the motion to receive the report. I'll move that.
Great, thank you. Do we have a seconder? John Campbell. Can we put the word in?
It was actually moved by Paula and myself. But that's okay.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I guess we amended it, so I guess we should, to be fair to you guys, is that okay, that wording, Paula and Debbie?
Yes, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor?
Councilor Nunziata, Ms. Coombs, Mr. Campbell, Mr. McCrae, Ms. Jackson, Mr. Smith, Ms. Douglas.
I seem to be frozen, so yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Fletcher, the motion, and the chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, everybody. So we're already over time. So in item 8, all I wanted to do is so I guess there's two things, and what we might do is canvass this separately. Just kind of, I want to, as we think about returning to what's going to happen, what I might do is have Dara canvass the directors on their comfort level around in-person versus virtual as we go forward. And then I just wanted to kind of, now we're, as we've been kind of hopefully coming out the other side, kind of returning a bit to our consideration of strategic issues in addition to succession. And some of, obviously fundamentally our obligation to be fulfill the tenant first in the shareholder direction, and to just make sure we have those discussion points on our agenda as we kind of head back into a more normal meeting process. But I don't think we can, as we're already over, I don't propose to have us discuss that. So I'm going to just defer that issue. Any other business from any director? No, seeing none. I'm going to request a motion to terminate the public meeting.
So moved.
John, seconded by Brian. All those in favor? Great. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. We had a very full, important agenda, so thank you for your participation. That terminates our meeting.